Hello, everyone. Welcome to another captivating story on Life Story 999. Today, we bring you an incredible tale of discovery, history, and how an unexpected find can change everything. Sit back, relax, and join us on this extraordinary journey. And remember, if you've ever experienced something like this, feel free to share your story in the comments or email us. Margaret and George McAllister, a retired couple in their 70s, had finally bought the home they had always dreamed of. The cozy cottage was perfect for them to enjoy their golden years, and it was nestled in a quaint, quiet neighborhood where they hoped to spend time gardening, reading, and enjoying peaceful moments together. One sunny afternoon, while cleaning out the old pantry, Margaret noticed an unusual hollow sound beneath her feet. Intrigued but cautious, she called George to help investigate. George, always up for an adventure, carefully peeled back the old linoleum flooring to reveal an unusual metal hatch hidden beneath. They were both astonished, but Margaret felt uneasy. What could possibly be down there? George, his curiosity piqued, decided they had to find out. With a flashlight in hand, he opened the rusty hatch, revealing a dark, eerie tunnel leading deep underground. Margaret was hesitant, insisting they call the police first. But George, a former history teacher, was too intrigued to wait. "I'm going in," George said, giving Margaret a reassuring smile. Margaret, however, felt a chill. She couldn't shake off the feeling that this might be something far beyond their imagination. She picked up her phone and called the police, explaining their unusual discovery. As George lowered himself into the dark space, Margaret anxiously watched, praying for his safety. She could hear his muffled exclamations as he described what he was seeing, but it only heightened her concern. What secrets could be hidden beneath their cozy home? Minutes later, the distant sound of police sirens echoed in the neighborhood, bringing both relief and anxiety to Margaret. Two officers arrived, visibly curious as they were briefed on the situation. They approached the hatch cautiously, and one of them began to descend with George while the other stayed behind with Margaret. Margaret's heart pounded as she waited, her mind racing through all the possibilities. Was it an old cellar, a forgotten hideaway, or something even more sinister? The officer's voice suddenly crackled over the radio. "We're going to need backup. This is much bigger than we thought." Margaret's eyes widened as she clutched her phone tighter, realizing that whatever lay beneath their dream home was far beyond anything they could have imagined. Her once quiet life was about to take a dramatic turn, and she had no idea just how much this hidden mystery would change everything for her and George. Stay tuned for the next part of this story as we uncover what lies hidden beneath the McAllisters' cozy cottage. What would you do if you found something like this in your home? Let us know in the comments below. George's voice echoed up from the depths, tinged with awe. "Margaret, you won't believe this. It's a whole underground bunker." Margaret's heart raced as she leaned over the edge, peering into the dark opening. She could barely see George's flashlight flickering below, his voice fading as he continued to explore. Her nerves grew tighter with each passing moment, the eerie silence of the tunnel amplifying her unease. Soon, the police arrived. Two officers approached the house, their expressions skeptical but intrigued. They listened to Margaret's hurried explanation before cautiously descending into the bunker to assist George. Margaret stayed behind, her hands trembling as she wrung them together, her eyes never leaving the open hatch. Moments that felt like hours passed before George re-emerged, his face streaked with dirt and his eyes wide with excitement. Behind him, the officers followed, their faces mirroring his amazement. "You won't believe what's down there," George said breathlessly. "It's like a time capsule, a real World War II bunker." Margaret could hardly believe what she was hearing. She watched as George dusted himself off, his excitement infectious despite her lingering worry. The officers exchanged glances before one of them stepped away to call for backup. This was clearly no ordinary discovery. Within the hour, the McAllisters' quiet neighborhood was transformed into a hub of activity. More police cars arrived, along with emergency response teams and historical experts, all drawn by the possibility of something extraordinary. Margaret's garden, once filled with roses and petunias, was now overrun with people and equipment as they prepared to delve deeper into the mysterious bunker. The lead detective approached Margaret and George, his expression a mix of curiosity and gravity. "You may have just stumbled upon something of immense historical significance," he began. Margaret's heart skipped a beat as he continued, explaining that the bunker appeared to be an Allied command post from the final days of World War II. An incredible relic that had somehow remained hidden and forgotten beneath their feet for over 70 years. As more experts arrived, the true scale of the bunker began to reveal itself. Teams worked methodically, uncovering rooms filled with old equipment, dusty documents, and crates of supplies that had been sealed for decades. The deeper they went, the more they realized this was not just any bunker. It was a piece of history frozen in time. Margaret watched in awe as historians began examining the artifacts. They found old, rusted radios, strategic maps pinned to crumbling walls, and documents filled with encrypted messages. One historian turned to George, his voice filled with reverence. These maps and messages could provide insights into strategies used during the war. There might be secrets here that could rewrite parts of history as we know it. George nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of excitement and disbelief. He had always loved history, but never in his wildest dreams did he think he would be part of uncovering it in such a significant way. Margaret stood by his side, her earlier anxiety slowly being replaced by a sense of awe and pride. They had thought they were buying a cozy retirement home, but they had instead found themselves at the center of something that could change how people understood the past. As the evening turned to night, the McAllisters watched their garden, now illuminated by floodlights, become a makeshift archaeological site. Experts and officers moved in and out of the bunker, their voices hushed with wonder. Margaret and George exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging that their lives had taken an unexpected turn, one that would be far from the quiet retirement they had planned. The lead detective returned, his expression serious but tinged with excitement. "We're bringing in more specialists," he said. "This could take days, maybe weeks to fully uncover. But I have to tell you, you two have found something truly extraordinary here." Margaret took George's hand, squeezing it gently. She knew that whatever lay ahead, they were in it together. They had uncovered a hidden chapter of history, and now it was up to them to help reveal it to the world. "Stay tuned, everyone," Margaret thought, her heart swelling with anticipation. This is just the beginning. In the days that followed, news of the discovery spread like wildfire. Journalists and historians from across the country flocked to the McAllisters' home, eager to see the hidden bunker firsthand. Margaret and George, who had hoped for a quiet retirement, suddenly found themselves at the center of a media frenzy. Their once serene garden was now buzzing with activity, cameras flashing and microphones thrust in their faces as they recounted their incredible discovery. Margaret felt a mix of awe and apprehension as they were interviewed for television segments, their story appearing in newspapers and on online articles worldwide. George, with his background as a history teacher, spoke eloquently about the importance of preserving history, while Margaret stood by his side, adjusting to the unexpected attention. Though it was overwhelming at times, they both began to realize the immense value of what they had found. The couple faced a tough decision. Should they keep their home private, or should they share this incredible piece of history with the world? George felt strongly that the bunker should be preserved and studied. Margaret, though initially hesitant, could not deny the significance of their discovery. It was too important to keep to themselves. Together, they decided to allow experts to transform the bunker into a small historical site, accessible to the public. The transformation of their property began in earnest. Teams of archaeologists, historians, and construction workers descended upon the garden. They carefully excavated the rest of the bunker, revealing even more rooms and hidden secrets. Every day brought new discoveries. An observation tower, old ration supplies, and even a stash of preserved whiskey, perfectly sealed and untouched since the 1940s. Each artifact brought historians closer to understanding the bunker's purpose and the lives of those who had once used it. Margaret's brother, Richard, who had experience in construction, offered his help in turning the site into a place the public could visit. He worked tirelessly with the team to ensure the structural integrity of the bunker, reinforcing walls and creating a safe pathway for visitors. Richard's efforts, combined with the work of experts, began to turn the McAllisters' backyard into a fascinating historical attraction. As the days turned into weeks, Margaret and George watched their beloved home transform. The peaceful garden they had once enjoyed was now a small museum, filled with the echoes of history. The bunker itself became the centerpiece, preserved and accessible for tours, with educational plaques and guides who could explain the historical context. It was a strange feeling for Margaret. Her quiet haven had become a place of learning and curiosity for strangers from all over. Despite the loss of their private retreat, Margaret found a new sense of fulfillment in their decision. She listened to visitors' amazed reactions as they toured the bunker, and she began to understand just how much their discovery meant to others. People from all walks of life came to see the hidden relic. Veterans shared their stories, and school children marveled at the history beneath their feet. It became clear that their decision to share the bunker was the right one. One afternoon, as a group of students gathered around the entrance to the bunker, a young boy looked up at Margaret and asked, "Did you ever think you'd find something like this in your garden?" Margaret smiled, shaking her head. "Not in a million years," she replied. "But sometimes the most extraordinary things are hidden right where we least expect them." The media attention eventually died down, but the fascination with the bunker remained. The McAllisters' home, once their private dream retreat, had become a piece of living history. And although it wasn't the quiet retirement they had imagined, it was meaningful in a way they never could have anticipated. They had uncovered a lost chapter of the past, and in doing so, they had brought people closer to understanding the lives and sacrifices of those who came before them. Margaret and George stood hand in hand, watching as another group of visitors descended into the bunker. Their lives had changed forever, but they wouldn't have had it any other way. Together, they had become the unlikely guardians of history, and they were ready for whatever came next. A year after the initial discovery, the McAllisters' bunker officially opened as a museum. The small cottage garden had been transformed into a fascinating historical site, with the bunker as its centerpiece. People from all walks of life came to see the place that had been hidden beneath an ordinary home for so long. It became a source of pride for the community, a hidden treasure that everyone wanted to explore. Margaret and George insisted that the museum offer free admission. They wanted everyone, regardless of their circumstances, to have the opportunity to connect with history. They knew that the bunker was not just their story. It belonged to everyone. The museum quickly became a popular destination, drawing thousands of visitors within its first few months. Veterans, students, and history enthusiasts walked through the rooms where time had stood still, marveling at the artifacts and learning about the war from a new perspective. Margaret and George moved into a smaller cottage built on the edge of the property. From their new home, they could still see the museum, and they took great pride in watching people come and go, eager to learn about the past. They had become caretakers of history, a role they embraced with enthusiasm. It wasn't the quiet retirement they had imagined, but it was fulfilling in a way they had never expected. Every morning, Margaret and George would walk over to the museum, greeting the first visitors of the day and sharing stories about their incredible discovery. They began guiding small groups through the bunker, explaining what it was like to find such a significant piece of history beneath their feet. Their passion and personal connection to the story made the tours truly special, and many visitors left feeling inspired by the couple's dedication. One afternoon, during a particularly busy day, a young visitor asked Margaret, "Why did you decide to share this with everyone?" Margaret smiled gently, her eyes softening. "We can't look to the future without understanding our past," she replied. "This place isn't just about World War II. It's about the people who lived through those times, their courage, their sacrifices. We wanted to share that, so we could all learn and grow." Her words resonated with the visitors, and Margaret noticed how many of them nodded in agreement. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The bunker had once been a secret, hidden beneath layers of earth and time, but now it was a place where people could come together, learn, and reflect. The museum's popularity grew as word spread. School groups began visiting regularly, the laughter and chatter of children filling the garden as they learned about history in a hands-on way. Veterans returned to the bunker, some with tears in their eyes, as they remembered their own experiences from decades before. Families came, curious to see what lay beneath the seemingly ordinary cottage, and they left with a new appreciation for the sacrifices made during the war. Margaret and George had not expected the bunker to become such an important part of the community, but they welcomed the responsibility. They took pride in maintaining the site, ensuring that the history it contained was preserved for future generations. Richard, Margaret's brother, continued to play a crucial role, helping with maintenance and the occasional restoration project to keep the bunker safe and accessible. The transformation of their garden into a museum was not without its challenges. There were days when the work seemed endless, repairs that needed to be made, exhibits that needed updating, and the constant flow of visitors to manage. But Margaret and George never wavered in their commitment. They knew that what they were doing mattered. One day, a local news crew returned to do a follow-up story on the bunker. The reporter asked George if he ever missed the quiet life they had planned. George paused for a moment, glancing at Margaret before answering. "We thought we wanted a quiet retirement," he said with a smile, "but what we found instead was a purpose. This bunker, this history, it's bigger than us. And being able to share it has been the most rewarding experience of our lives." As the sun began to set that evening, Margaret and George sat on the porch of their small cottage, watching the last few visitors leave the museum. The glow of the setting sun bathed the garden in a warm light, and Margaret felt a deep sense of peace. They had turned an unexpected discovery into something beautiful, something that connected people to the past and helped them understand the present. Margaret turned to George, her voice filled with emotion. "I think we've done something good here," she said. George nodded, taking her hand in his. "Yes, we have," he replied softly. "And it's just the beginning." Together, they watched as the lights of the museum flickered on, illuminating the path for future visitors. Their journey had taken an unexpected turn, but it had led them to a place of purpose and meaning they wouldn't trade for anything. The impact of the McAllisters' discovery went far beyond what they could have imagined. What started as a simple renovation turned into an opportunity to unlock a hidden chapter of history, and the effects rippled far and wide. Historians pored over the bunker's contents, piecing together new insights into wartime strategies and the daily life of Allied soldiers during World War II. Some of the documents contained information that had never been seen before, shedding light on the final days of the war in Europe. The McAllisters' decision to open their home to the public had allowed countless people to connect with a part of history that had been hidden for decades. Schools began organizing field trips to the museum, and young students were given the chance to experience history in a hands-on way. Walking through the bunker, seeing the artifacts up close, and hearing stories from George and Margaret brought the past alive in a way that no textbook ever could. The laughter of children filled the garden as they learned, their faces alight with curiosity and awe. Veterans also visited the museum. Many of them moved to tears as they remembered their own experiences. The bunker became a place of reflection, a place where they could share their stories and connect with others who understood the sacrifices they had made. For some, it was a cathartic experience, a chance to heal, to feel seen and appreciated. Margaret and George often joined these veterans, listening to their stories and offering a compassionate ear. The connections that were forged in that small garden were profound. Margaret and George often reflected on how much their lives had changed. They had simply wanted a peaceful place to enjoy their retirement, but fate had other plans. They had found themselves as stewards of history, responsible for preserving and sharing something far bigger than themselves. And though it had been challenging, there were days when the work seemed overwhelming. They wouldn't have had it any other way. George's passion for history, which had been a lifelong interest, found its true purpose. He loved seeing people's reactions when they stepped into the bunker for the first time. Their eyes would widen, their voices hushed with reverence as they took in the carefully preserved artifacts. Margaret, too, found great joy in seeing how their decision had touched so many lives. It was an unexpected but deeply rewarding journey. One afternoon, during an interview for a documentary, George was asked about the impact of their discovery. He paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "This discovery changed our lives," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "But more importantly, it's changing how we understand our past. And that's something truly special. History isn't just about dates and battles. It's about the people who lived through it, their courage, their sacrifices. Sharing that with others, especially the younger generations, that's what makes it all worthwhile. Margaret nodded in agreement. We've seen so many people walk through those doors. Families, veterans, students, and every one of them takes something different away. They leave with a deeper understanding, a greater appreciation for what came before. And that's all we ever wanted, to make sure the sacrifices of those who came before us are never forgotten. As the years passed, the McAllisters continued to care for the museum, and their dedication never wavered. They became a beloved part of the community, their story inspiring others to look at the past with new eyes. The museum grew, with more exhibits being added, and the garden, once their private sanctuary, became a thriving place of learning and connection. Margaret and George knew that one day, they would have to pass the responsibility on to someone else. But they were ready for that. They had laid the foundation, and they trusted that others would continue their work. The bunker was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a bridge to the future, a reminder of what humanity is capable of when faced with adversity. Their legacy was not the quiet retirement they had once envisioned. It was something far more meaningful. And as they stood together, watching another group of students enter the bunker, Margaret squeezed George's hand, a smile spreading across her face. "We've done something good here," she said softly. George nodded, his eyes misty with pride. "Yes, we have," he replied. And together, they knew that their legacy would endure, touching lives for generations to come. Thank you for joining us on this amazing journey with Margaret and George. Their story is a beautiful reminder that sometimes, the most extraordinary things are hidden right beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered. The McAllisters' lives were forever changed by their incredible find, and their decision to share it with the world created a legacy that will inspire future generations. We hope you enjoyed this story as much as we did. It's stories like this that remind us of the power of history, the way it shapes who we are and where we are headed. Margaret and George's journey wasn't just about uncovering an old bunker. It was about uncovering the human stories within, the sacrifices, the courage, and the resilience that defines us all. Now, we want to hear from you. What would you do if you found a hidden piece of history in your own home? Have you ever experienced an unexpected discovery that changed your life? Whether it's a story from your own past, a family heirloom you found, or something mysterious you've uncovered, we'd love to hear about it. Your stories are what make our community so special, and your experience might even inspire our next video. Please share your thoughts and stories in the comments below, or feel free to send us an email. We love reading your experiences and connecting with all of you. It's the connection with our viewers that makes sharing these stories so meaningful. Every story matters, and who knows, maybe your experience will be the next incredible journey we share here on Life Story 999. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another amazing story. We have so many more incredible tales to share with you, and we can't wait for you to be a part of our growing community. Until next time, take care, keep exploring, and remember, the most incredible discoveries often start with a single, curious step. Keep your eyes open, stay curious, and who knows what wonders you might find beneath the surface of your everyday life. Thank you again for joining us on this remarkable journey, and we look forward to seeing you in our next story. Stay tuned, stay curious, and keep discovering the world around you. The past is always closer than we think, and sometimes, the most extraordinary things are just waiting to be found. Goodbye for now, and we hope to see you again soon on Life Story 999.